Hello everyone, it's End Times Talk, and I wanted to come at you with a video pertaining to some of the crazy things that are going on in the world right now. Things are truly heating up, and I think that some of these can even be, we could even say that these are some biblical signs that are happening. In Australia, it had literally rained fish, from what I understand. It's absolutely crazy. There's big fish everywhere. I do know in the past there has been frogs that have rained down, small fish that have rained down. I know in certain areas there's been blood rain, like in Siberia, in different places like that. There's another area, I think in like India, where there was blood rain as well. I mean, these are some biblical signs, folks. Also in China, there was supposedly worms that had rained down from the sky, and literally in the news, uh, in China, they're telling people to make sure you take an umbrella with you. Check this picture in these videos out.
I'm here on my buddy's farm in Aurora. So I come out to the greenhouse this morning. After rain, we got to come through and just push up the plastic, let the water off. I left water in this one because have you ever seen worms on top of a greenhouse?
So here's the thing with these critters raining down out of the sky, and this is why I believe it's biblical. All right, there's some crazy videos you can research online where people are talking about tornadoes going over a swamp area and picking up these frogs or picking up these fish, or a tornado picking up these worms and causing them to rain down out of the sky. But how selective is a tornado? I mean, this is just one species of animal that's raining down, and I think that's also God's way of outsmarting people's crackpot theories about tornadoes sucking these critters up into the sky. And I mean, there's literally like National Geographic videos that you can find where they're talking about how, because of these frogs that rained down out of the sky in the past, this tornado came over a swamp, sucked them up, and they lingered in the air until they grew. Frogs can't grow outside of their environment like that. I mean, come on, people. I mean, they need nutrients and food to be able to grow, and there's none of that in the sky. And don't you think birds would come along and be picking them up if you have these animals just floating out of in the sky somewhere? And it's just absolutely mind blowing, some of these crackpot theories that they're coming up with, that the secularists are trying to come up with to explain away these biblical events that are happening all around us. I mean, it blows my mind, people. On another note, Silicon Valley Bank has collapsed, and you really just got to kind of see these videos for yourself. Check these videos out.
We are starting to get a more precise sense of what it means when Joe Biden brags about the strongest and most equitable economic recovery in modern history. What it means is it could be time to buy gold and stockpile food. Oh, there's a deal on Russian steel case? I think I'll pick up a pallet. Just kidding, sort of. Yesterday, some of the biggest banks in this country, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, collectively lost more than $50 billion in market value in one day. That's quite a hit. On the other hand, those banks still exist, and you can't say that for Silicon Valley Bank. As of this morning, Silicon Valley Bank, or SVB, has gone under completely. That makes the second biggest bank failure in the history of this country. And it's significant. SVB financed nearly half of all venture-backed healthcare and technology companies in the United States. It also apparently held significant cash reserves for some of the biggest cryptocurrencies, and it's now gone. Federal regulators have renamed it and taken it over, and that means an awful lot of people lost an awful lot of money. And no, most of that money was not insured, no matter what they tell you. The FDIC only guarantees bank deposits up to $250,000. And according to some reports, more than 90% of all deposits at SVB exceeded that. And it's unclear whether those people ever see their money again. In fact, when customers showed up at SVB's branch in Manhattan today to get their deposits back, managers called the police. So what we have here is a 1929-style bank run, and that's not a good sign for anyone. The question is whether the people who run SVB saw it coming. The CEO, a man called Greg Becker, apparently sold more than $2 million in bank stock over the last 2 weeks. According to the site Unusual Whales, several other high-level employees of SVB, including Chief Marketing Officer Michelle Draper, Chief Operations Officer Phil Cox, General Counsel Michael Zuckert, all sold significant amounts of stock in SVB this year. Did those employees know their bank was in trouble? We don't know. And once again, where were the regulators who were supposed to prevent this? Once again, we don't know. And the business press supposed to be telling ordinary people what's happening with business? Apparently nobody noticed anything. In fact, as with the FTX crypto scam, you may recall, self-described financial experts in the media were busy promoting Silicon Valley Bank as a great investment that would last forever. The formerly great but now quite embarrassing Forbes magazine, in fact, named SVB to its list of America's best banks, not once, but 5 years in a row.
Should be accessible when people need to know, but I don't think you have much hope of reaching a public that doesn't have a professional need to know.
I completely agree with that. I almost think you'd scare the public if you put this out. Like, why are they telling me this? Should I be concerned about my bank? Like, my insurance company doesn't tell me what they're doing with my assets. If they just assume they're going to pay my claim, right? I think you've got to think of the unintended consequences of taking a public that has more full faith and confidence in the banking system than maybe people in this room do. That we want them to have full faith and confidence in the banking system. They know the FDIC insurance is there. They know it works. They put their money in. They're going to get their money out. So there's a select crowd of people that are in the institutional side. And if they want to understand this, they're going to find a way to understand this. There's a bunch of law firms represented in this room. There's a bunch of people who charge them by the hour a lot of money to explain this all to them. And it's fine. I don't have a problem with that. And they all have huge staffs. But I would be careful about the unintended consequences of starting to blast too much of this out in the general public.
I wondered whether there are some market tests of whether you're being heard. And I think about TLAC. So TLAC should respond to good and bad news about the institutions. And it's really important. I mean, it's a little bit conflicted, right? I mean, it's important that people understand they can be bailed in, but you don't want a huge run on the institution. But they're going to be. And it could be an early warning signal to the FDIC and the primary regulators when these things happen. And there may be some other prices. This is similar to what Jay was saying in the market that you can tell whether people understand who's going to be protected, who isn't going to be protected. It would be, I think, an interesting study to look at the evolution of market prices in a situation like March of 2020, for example, and see whether people understood what might happen.
Friday, regulators rushed to seize the assets of one of Silicon Valley's top banks, making the largest failure of a U.S. financial institution since the height of financial crisis almost 15 years ago. Silicon Valley Bank, the nation's 16th largest bank, failed after depositors hurried to withdraw money this week amid anxiety over the bank's health. It was the second biggest bank failure in U.S. history after the collapse of Washington Mutual in 2008. The impact is going to be far-reaching. The sudden collapse of Silicon Valley Bank on Friday sent shockwaves through the startup community, which has come to view the lender as a source of reliable capital, particularly of some of tech's moonshots. Many Indian startups, especially based out of US, are worried.
Isn't that crazy, folks, what's happening right now with the banks? I mean, this truly blows my mind. I mean, we're getting close to something big. For all of you who were able to catch my video that I did yesterday, the Lord, I felt, had given me a dream, and I believe and I feel in my spirit that these signs that are happening are symbolic of those waves starting to come, not the tidal waves, but these waves that started to destabilize the ship and really rock the boat, the storm that was brewing in the beginning. I think something big is coming, people, and I think we need to expect it. I think that right now there's some serious things happening all over the globe, and I also want to comment on the rise in crime that's happening all over the country. I have a friend who's a police officer in my local area, and we were on the phone yesterday, and he was telling me things that I just couldn't believe are going on, and they're not in the newspapers. It's not in the news. All right, I mean, there's some things I can't even share with you here on YouTube about some of the things going on behind the scenes, the nastiness that's happening in our communities. And you know, the area that I live in is not that big. All right, it's an area of 10,000 plus. But I'm telling you, folks, like in these some of these bigger cities, these police are really going through it. You know what I'm saying? Like the line between law and order that's happening right now is so thin. All right, it's so thin. We don't understand how close we are to chaos. All right, people are sitting here bashing the cops right and left. I've heard people saying all cops are bad. That is not true. That is not true. You don't know those police officers personally. All right, you don't know them personally. And for those of us that do know these guys personally, we know that these guys are really going through it. The numbers are way down. They're basically half of what they should be. And the police are outnumbered by criminals 100 to 1. All right. The job that they're doing is so difficult right now, especially because of all the propaganda being pushed in the news media about how cops are bad and this cop did this and this cop did that. And I'm not saying all cops are perfect. Okay. I'm not saying all police officers are perfect. There are some police officers who have been tainted and who make decisions that are corrupt. Okay. I admit that in the bigger cities there are, but in the smaller areas, man, there's the fine line between chaos and order is so thin right now. I mean, people really should be preparing to protect their families from marauders, thieves, and criminals. I mean, it's absolutely crazy what's going on right now. It's crazy the attack that our children are under in the schools right now. It's crazy the attack that our communities are under right now by criminal activity. And my friend who's a police officer, he's a fellow believer in Jesus Christ, and I'm glad that we have him in our area. But he's already overwhelmed. He's just so overwhelmed by what's going on. And he said that it's interesting, though, because when he gets a few different calls, all right, in the same day, he gets a lot of the same phone calls for a lot of the same criminal activity. And he said it's almost like a spirit is moving through the area. All right. He said it's almost like demons are running rampant, and they are. They are. I mean, we are in biblical times, folks. I mean, we are in the end times. This is happening, all right? And I think we need to take this very, very seriously. Everybody in their homes, all comforted and warm, this winter, and everybody's taken care of and all these different things, but you don't understand what's outside lurking about. All right? Satan is literally a lion seeking whom he may destroy. All right, he's lurking about out there, and he's working through people who are on drugs, who are criminals, people who are violent. It's absolutely insane the spirit of death that's on people. All right, it's absolutely insane how bad this is all getting. All right, and as the system fails, you're going to see a continued rise in crime. That's something that they won't comment on, all right, is the rise in crime. You look it up and they are trying to cover it up. All right, they're trying to cover the rise in crime up. They don't put it in the newspapers. They're not putting it in on the TV and the news stations, especially the local stuff. All right, the local areas, like most of these areas, they can't even cover everything that's happening right now. me and a few of my fellow YouTubers, I mean, we understand how hard it is right now to keep up with the times that are happening, because there's so much happening and it's so fast. And I see that as like a prophetic crunch time. Okay, like we're in a time where, yes, prophecy is going to begin to be fulfilled, but time is speeding up. All right, time is literally speeding up. It's becoming so it's happening so fast that we can't keep our heads on straight. All right, every day we wake up and there's new news about what's going on in the world, and some explosion somewhere with some chemical being released, or some fire where some chemicals being released, and this is all planned. All this stuff is planned out because they have this thing called America 2050, and it's this agenda where they want to do these land grabs, and they want to have these specific areas where they move people into, like the movies Divergent, Insurgent, the Hunger Games. For those of us that have seen some of this TV show, The Last of Us, they have these walled-in cities in The Last of Us. In the 80s, they had those movies like Escape from LA and Escape from New York, where they had walled-in cities where criminals were placed. They want to pack people into these areas like sardines. Check this video out because you need to see this.
Founded in part by the Rockefellers, the United Nations has been acting as a de facto world government since 1945. Starting in the 1950s, the UN began funding scientists to measure for carbon dioxide. And in 1992, they drafted what they describe as the International Legal Instrument for the Conservation of Biological Diversity, and outlined their plans to seize control of land under the guise of climate conservation, known as Agenda 21, because they wanted to accomplish their goals by the 21st century. But by 2015, they were failing and officially pushed their deadline back with Agenda 2030. In 2010, the Rockefeller Foundation published Scenario for the Future of Technology and International Development, wherein they outlined 4 different ways of achieving their goals, which they wrote, once crossed, these axes create a matrix of 4 very different futures. In 2020, they crossed the axis into the lockstep matrix. In 2022, at their 15th Convention on Biological Diversity, COP15, the UN increased the amount of land they plan to steal to 30% by 2030. Their 30 by 30 plan will require the displacement of millions. So far, the direct confiscation approach is working in Europe. The Dutch farmers have been peacefully protesting, but they are being shot at by the police, and so the government isn't stopping, which is why the direct approach won't work in America. Less than a year after Agenda 21 was drafted, the U.S. federal government attempted stripping away constitutional land rights from the Bundy family in Nevada. It was fought in the courts for decades and resulted in a peaceful protest with armed protesters. To avoid a gunfight, the feds backed off and adapted their plans. In 2008, the Rockefeller Foundation published America 2050, a strategy to reclaim natural resources and reform the federal role in land use policy. The America 2050 documents outline which areas of the country will be depopulated and which areas will be politically absorbed into 10 new megaregions. The Rockefellers envision most of the depopulation to occur in the central corridor of the United States, a massive area that is not included in the America 2050 infrastructure map and excluded from the new high-speed rail system planned. A big part of Rockefeller's America 2050 is the High-Speed Rail in America plan, which requires the use of existing railways for its implementation. Some are suggesting that this is why we are seeing so many train derailments. There have been over a dozen derailments and chemical spills on railways in just the past few months, some of which, like the one in East Palestine, are highly suspicious. And these chemical spills could be used as an excuse by the state to evacuate you from your homes and steal your land. The Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act, commonly known as Superfund, was enacted by Congress in 1980. The Superfund provides the EPA with the authority to seize control of private lands for long-term remedial response actions during the event of a toxic disaster. If what we are being told about the chemicals that were burned and released into East Palestine is true, then the EPA could plausibly shut down a massive area, and Cleveland can house the dislocated Ohioans in their 15-minute cities, while the government cleans up the mess and accepts the land as payment. Whether it's called Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, or America 2050, the United Nations and their friends are never going to quit.
And you see, America 2050 is happening all around us. I mean, they're literally unfolding that plan before our very eyes, and I think it's going to be complete before 2050. I just think that that's what they're calling it. They're making these areas so toxic that eventually the EPA is going to come in, and they're basically going to say, well, y'all need to move, and we have a place for you, and we'll bring in water, we'll bring in food. You don't have to grow anything. You don't have to drink out of the rivers here because we know how polluted it is. I mean, it's happening, folks. It's happening. These sectors that you've seen in this video that I just showed you about America 2050, that those are the walled-in cities, I believe. Within these areas that they've shown you on this map, there, I believe, within those is the 15-minute cities. Okay, and you're gonna have multiple 15-minute cities. You're like, and I've shown you these cities before. Cities like they're trying to build in Saudi Arabia, all right, in other places, where in like Abu Dhabi, where they're making these walled-in cities. This is happening globally. This isn't just something that's happening in America. Well, we need to take this very seriously, folks. The system of the beast is fastly approaching us. I do not believe that the Great Tribulation is here yet, but I believe we're very close to a pre-tribulation rapture. It could happen at any moment, but we cannot set dates, all right? I really would like people to go check out the video that I made yesterday. There is a lot of good spiritual information in there that will help people to understand the times that we're in right now. But I also think that as we look through things with physical eyes, we need to be looking at things with spiritual eyes as well. We cannot neglect the Spirit. We cannot neglect the Holy Spirit. We cannot neglect God, and we cannot neglect Jesus. All right, we have to be focused on them through these times. Yes, we need to be paying attention to the enemy that's surrounding us, so to speak. But we also need to be paying attention to the Spirit of God and how He's moving. We are all watchmen and watchwomen on the wall, and it's said that when a watchman or a watchwoman was set upon the wall back in the Ancient of Days, and they were caught sleeping, all right, and an enemy came into the city, into the walled-in city, and there were people who passed away from an attack that the watchman was supposed to be watching for, and fell asleep during their watch. That the blood that was shed because of the failure of the watchman to keep watch over the city, all right, was held on the watchman's hands. And so I don't want anybody's blood held on my hands from what's coming. I want to be here. I want to be warning you guys. I want to be encouraging you guys to be watching yourselves and to be warning people in your circle, in your realm to affect, the people that are around you that you can talk to tell them and warn them of the things to come. For quite some time, people like you and me who are watchwomen and watchmen, we've been sounding the alarm, and people mock us, they scorn us, they make fun of us, they tell us that we're wrong and this and that all things continue as they were. But I'm telling you, vindication is coming, people. Vindication is coming. From all the things that you've ever warned people about, vindication is coming. And vindication is already happening. All right, I've already had multiple people come up to me and call me and message me and telling me that all the things that I've been telling them for years is happening. And so I want to make sure that you guys are encouraged to know that you don't have to be scared when you're on the right side of history. We always hear these leftist liberals and people who are attacking Christians say, oh, Christians, you're on the wrong side of history. You better get on the right side of history. Man, I don't want to be on your side of history because of Jesus, I know the way things pan out in the very end. And I want to be on the right side of God's history. I want to be on the right side of eternity. All right. That's where I want to be. And I know you do too. And that's why you're here watching this video right now. So I wanted to come at you with this video and show you these things that are going on in all over the world. And but I also wanted to tell you there is a rise in crime happening. And like I said, for those of you who had watched my video yesterday pertaining to the dream that I felt the Lord had shown me, the waves are beginning to rock the boat, so to speak. They really are. We're not being hit by tsunami waves yet or tidal waves yet, but things are beginning to get bad. The storm is beginning to brew, and we're seeing it around us. But I want you to know that in Jesus Christ we are safe. We are in the palm of His hand. He has got all of this under control. And a lot of people give the system and the powers that be, the elitists, too much credit and say, oh, this is a controlled collapse. Well, you know what? It might be, but Jesus is controlling all of that. These things have to come. He says the end cannot come lest there be a falling away first. And the world is falling away. All right. And so, but there are also revivals breaking out, and God is, there's a tremendous and mighty move of God's Spirit upon the earth as well. And there's a harvest that's going to be reaped by the Lord that is so tremendous, because God is going to shake this world up and bring the haughty and the proud to their knees. He's going to bring people to a point where they're going to repent and turn from their ways. All right. If for all of the people who know in their heart that they're doing wrong, God is going to bring those people to their knees so that way He can heal them and break them free from the sin and the bondage that they're under. Jesus wants a pure and spotless bride when He comes in the pre-tribulation rapture. He wants a bride that is ready for Him. All right. And so we have to be about our Father's business. We need to be witnessing, preaching, teaching, and loving people in Jesus Christ's name. But we also need to be repentant. We need to be repentant daily. All right. It's not easy to walk your cross every day, to crucify your flesh. Deny your flesh of the things that it wants, all the lusts of the flesh. Rebuke them and walk away from them. Cast them down. Cast them at the foot of the cross. You weren't meant to bear these burdens. Jesus was. Jesus was the sacrificial lamb. He took all the sin of the world and bore that on the cross so that way we didn't have to. Lean upon Jesus in this time. Don't be fearful of these things coming. Okay? Don't be fearful of these things coming. All these things that are happening right now have to come to pass, and we live in exciting times, believe it or not. So many people have longed to see these times, these end of days, and here we are in them right now. I mean, you cannot deny that we're in the end times. So be encouraged to know that the coming of the Lord is soon. All right? He is coming soon. Jesus is coming soon for His bride. So let's be ready for Him. Thanks for watching End Times Talk, and may God bless you, and may God keep you.
All systems have to be brought into harmony in order to control them all. Because when systems don't meet, when they're out of balance or not in sync with one another, they can't be controlled centrally. And the goal of Agenda 21 is one world government and total control from a central unit. Every nation that signed on to Agenda 21 has its local Agenda 21 plan. And people in the United States are completely unaware of this. If I go out and talk about this, the United States press attacks me and calls me, which is totally ridiculous. It is but it's not a theory. It's a fact. The three pillars of United Nations Agenda 21 are economy, ecology, and equity, the three E's. And everyone's sort of thinks that they know what that means, the idea of social equity. It must mean that, well, everyone's going to have access to clean water and clean air, and no one's property is going to be used as a dumping ground because they are at a poverty level. But really what social equity is about impoverishing huge portions of the population and bringing down the developed nations. Everything that we're looking at now is destined to collapse our economies. It's a totalitarian state being developed right now all over the world. And what major corporations want in this development is to be able to have full movement of workers without borders or boundaries, to be able to move their goods through without regulations, and to reduce wages. And so this is the goal. So this is what you find with social equity. And of course, economy and ecology is about, these are the three circles: economy, ecology, and social equity. And where they meet in the center is balance. But really that balance is a communitarian balance. So it's not balance of well-being of the people. What it is it's a balance for corporations so that they can exploit and control and have populations in an area, in tightly packed, dense areas.